There is a moment in life when the silence around you stops feeling empty and starts feeling full. Full of tension, full of meaning, full of something your mind cannot explain, but your heart already knows. Maybe you felt it late at night. Maybe it hit you in the middle of a normal day. A strange pause, a heavy breath, a sudden memory of someone you were trying to release. And here is the truth most people ignore. When a person feels they are really losing you, something inside them begins to break open. Not later, not someday. The shift starts in silence. Stay with me, because what looks like distance can actually be the beginning of movement. What feels like the end can become the moment everything changes. You may not have a message yet. You may not have proof yet. But deep connections do not always speak through words first. They speak through pressure, through energy, through the quiet feeling that something unseen is turning. If you have been sensing that change, this is for you. Because the person who once held back, stayed cold, or acted unsure may now be standing face to face with the one thing they never wanted to admit. The thought of losing you has become more painful than the fear of coming closer. For a long time, this person may have lived as if your presence was guaranteed. They moved slowly. They delayed. They hid behind confusion, pride, timing, or old wounds. On the surface, it looked like control. But underneath that mask was comfort. They believed you would still be there, still caring, still holding emotional space for them while they figured themselves out. And when someone feels that kind of certainty, they often do not move. They lean back. They let the bond carry itself. But energy never stays still forever. The second you began changing, even in a quiet way, the whole connection started to shift. Maybe you did not announce it. Maybe you did not block them, confront them, or make a scene. You simply became less available inside. You gave less of your mind away. You stopped living in the question of them. And that change hit harder than any argument ever could. Because now they are not just dealing with your absence in the physical world, they are dealing with your withdrawal from the emotional place where they always found you waiting. That is what wakes people up. Not noise, not drama, the silence that says, I am no longer standing here in the same way. And once that silence is felt, it starts moving through them like a shock they cannot easily name. What changed everything was not revenge, it was self-respect. At some point, whether slowly or suddenly, you began choosing yourself again. You stopped pouring all your energy into reading signs, chasing clarity, and carrying hope on your back alone. You pulled your attention inward. You took your heart back into your own hands. And that act, quiet as it may have looked from the outside, created a powerful emptiness in the connection. Before, the space between you was filled by your effort, your thoughts, your waiting, your emotional labor. But now the space feels different. It is not dead. It is exposed. And people feel exposure more strongly than they feel words. Think of it like two people holding a rope. If one person is always pulling, the other only has to resist. They do not need to step forward. They do not need to grip with intention. But when the one who was pulling lets go, suddenly the balance changes. Suddenly the one on the other side stumbles. They feel the missing force. They feel the truth of how much was being carried for them. This is why your distance has more power now than your closeness once did. Because your silence is no longer asking, it is revealing. And when a person can no longer lean on your emotional presence, they are left standing in the cold reality of their own feelings. That is where the unexpected move begins. Most people do not run from love because love is weak. They run because love touches what they have spent years avoiding. That is why this person's reaction was never only about you. It was also about what you awakened in them. Every human being carries hidden fears, old pain, buried shame, and parts of themselves they do not know how to hold. When a deep bond appears, it acts like a mirror. It reflects not only beauty, but truth. And truth can feel dangerous to someone who has built their whole emotional life around staying guarded, so when they pulled away, became distant, acted confusing, or stayed emotionally half open, that behavior was not always proof that nothing was there. Sometimes it was proof that too much was there and they did not know how to manage it. As long as you stayed in pursuit, they could place the focus on you. They could say you were intense, emotional, or expecting too much. But now the screen is gone. You stepped back. And without that distraction, they are left alone with what really scares them. The fear is not simply losing a person. The fear is being forced to admit they felt something real and did not know how to honor it. Stay with me here, because this is where many deep stories turn. When the mirror remains and there is no longer anywhere to hide, the heart begins telling the truth the ego worked so hard to bury. That truth often arrives in a hard way. It comes when they begin to feel that losing you is not like losing just anyone. It feels personal. It feels strange. It feels like a missing piece inside their own life. That is because some people do not just enter our story. They awaken a hidden part of us. Your presence may have touched their softness, their vulnerability, their need for honesty, or the part of them that still believed in something pure. And when they feel that energy slipping away, it does not register as a casual loss. It lands like identity is shifting. Suddenly, the things that once distracted them stop working. The social life feels louder and emptier. The routines feel dry. The pride feels expensive. The control they protected for so long starts to feel like a prison instead of safety. This creates inner conflict. One part of them wants to stay the same, keep the distance, protect the old image. Another part is tired of pretending, tired of acting like the bond did not matter, tired of carrying a silence that keeps growing heavier. This is why the fear becomes so intense. It is no longer just about you reaching out or not reaching out. It is about them realizing that what they pushed away may have been the very thing their soul was asking for. And once a person sees that, really sees it, peace becomes hard to fake. The outside may still look normal. Inside, the storm has already started. That storm shows up in ways they cannot fully control. Sleep changes first. Quiet hours become louder. They may wake up in the middle of the night with pressure in their chest and no clear reason for it. The day does not help much either. Thoughts of you slip in without warning. A small memory appears while they are driving. A sentence you once said comes back while they are trying to work. The mind keeps circling what the heart refused to finish. And in today's world, the unrest often spills into digital habits. They may not call. Pride may still block that. But they watch. They check. They hover around your world in silent ways. They notice if you are active. They revisit old messages. They look for clues in your tone, your absence, your calm, your growth, and what unsettles them most is not seeing you angry. It is seeing you steady, seeing you continue, seeing you look like someone who might actually be okay without them. That is when fear becomes real. Because as long as they believed you would always emotionally stay in place, they could postpone action. But now your energy is saying something very different. It is saying life is moving, time is moving, you are moving. And if they do not do something, the door may not stay open forever. That is the moment watching turns into longing, and longing starts pressing toward action. So, if this has felt quiet on the surface, do not mistake quiet for stillness. Some of the biggest emotional shifts happen where nobody else can see them. What makes this even more powerful is that you may be feeling it too, not always in clear thoughts, but in waves. Sudden sadness, random pressure in your body, a strange warmth in your chest, a restless mood that seems to arrive from nowhere and then pass just as fast. Deep bonds can create an emotional field that reaches beyond logic. It can feel like you are picking up something that does not fully belong to you, and many times that is exactly what is happening. One person breaks open and the echo reaches the other. That is why signs can become stronger in these phases. You think of them and their name appears. A song hits at the exact moment you decide to let go. You dream of them with unusual clarity. In the dream, there is ease, truth, softness, conversation that feels more honest than waking life. Whether you call it intuition, energetic connection, or something you simply cannot explain, the effect is real enough to be felt. And here is the retention line you need to hear. Do not click away from this thought too fast, because the signs are not always there to pull you backward. Sometimes they are there to prepare you for change. They are there to show you that the pressure is building, that the cycle is reaching a turning point, and that what looks delayed may actually be gathering force. The connection is not asking you to chase. It is asking you to notice. But before the breakthrough, there is often one last wave of confusion. This is the part that makes people lose faith. Right before someone surrenders emotionally, their ego can make one final attempt to stay in charge. That is when they may seem colder, more distant, more stubborn. They may go silent again, act careless, or create one last wall that makes you think nothing is happening at all. But this reaction can be the final stretch of tension, like a rubber band pulling back before it flies forward. The heart is moving one way, the ego is pulling the other, and that inner fight creates behavior that looks contradictory from the outside. One day you feel their pull, the next day they seem shut down. Do not let that confuse you too easily. People on the edge of emotional truth are rarely graceful. They become defensive because the old version of them is losing ground. If they admit they need you, they also have to admit they mishandled something precious. They have to face regret. They have to look at their fear. So they resist. And this is where your test appears. If you rush in now, the pressure eases and they can return to hiding. But if you remain centered, the truth keeps working on them. The louder the silence becomes, the harder it is for them to keep pretending. No one can wear emotional armor forever when the inside has already started cracking. What matters now is not their performance. It is the pressure behind it. Eventually that pressure becomes too strong to contain. The wall that held everything back begins to fail. Not always with drama. Sometimes the collapse is quiet, but deep. A person reaches a point where they are exhausted by their own resistance. They get tired of acting detached while thinking of you constantly. Tired of holding pride while feeling loss. Tired of choosing distance when every part of them is secretly searching for relief. That is when the truth takes over. They stop asking whether the connection matters and start asking what they are supposed to do about it now. This shift is important because action begins the moment the inner argument changes. Before, they were debating the feeling. Now they are dealing with the consequences of ignoring it. That difference changes everything. They begin replaying moments with a new understanding. Things they once treated as ordinary now feel sacred. Little details become heavy with meaning. They see the care they missed, the safety they rejected, the honesty they could not hold at the time. And regret starts doing its work, not to punish them but to wake them up. Regret is one of the strongest teachers in human life because it strips away excuses. It shows a person exactly where they abandoned truth. And once that realization settles in, they do not just miss you, they understand your value. That understanding becomes a force. It pushes them toward movement, toward humility, toward some form of return, even if they still do not know exactly how to begin. As this inner shift deepens, you may notice something changing in you as well. The restless search starts calming down. The need to check, wonder, and chase signs loses its grip. Not because you no longer care, but because somewhere inside you feel that the energy is no longer stuck. The tug of war is ending. They are no longer only resisting, they are moving, and often, before a direct return, small indirect signals appear first. A sudden appearance in a familiar place, a mention through someone you both know, a post that feels strangely targeted, a tiny gesture that looks casual to everyone else but carries weight to you. These are often emotional test steps. They want to know if the bridge is still standing. They want to move closer without feeling completely exposed all at once. It is awkward, human, imperfect, but it matters. Because once someone has spent a long time hiding behind distance, even a small honest movement can cost them a lot internally. This is why you must keep your center. Let them come forward. Let them show effort. Let their actions carry the story now. You have already done your part by becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves for love. That was the hard lesson. That was the real turning point. And now, the connection has to meet you there, in that new space where love is no longer fed by anxiety, but by truth, mutual effort, and emotional responsibility. There comes a point of no return in these stories. A moment when they look at their own life and realize that everything they used to place above this connection feels flat. Work cannot cover it. Distractions cannot numb it. Pride cannot justify it. The idea of you truly moving on becomes more painful than the idea of risking rejection. That is usually when the return starts taking shape in a real way. They rehearse what to say. They imagine different versions of the first contact. They feel regret, but they also feel urgency. Time suddenly matters. The window feels smaller, and this urgency often reaches you as a strange stillness, like the air before rain. Your own energy becomes quieter, steadier, less attached to outcome. That is not weakness. That is power. It means you are no longer trying to control what happens next. You are allowing truth to reveal itself. And when the first message or first opening finally comes, it may seem simple on the surface. A hello, a small question, a reason that looks ordinary. But beneath those few words is a deeper surrender. They are not just speaking, they are crossing a bridge they once burned with fear. This is why your response matters. Not in the sense of chasing, over-explaining, or giving everything back instantly, but in the sense of honoring how far you have come. If they return, let them return to the version of you that knows their own value and no longer settles for confusion dressed up as mystery. The connection can only become healthy if the old pattern stays broken. That means the person who comes back cannot come back as the same one who left. And truthfully, by this stage, they usually know that. They understand that your silence changed them because it changed you first. You are no longer the person who would carry the whole emotional weight alone. You are no longer available for half love, mixed signals, or endless waiting. That new strength can feel beautiful to them and intimidating at the same time. But that is exactly what makes the next chapter possible. Respect grows where desperation ends. Balance begins where self-abandonment stops. So if they step toward you now, they are stepping toward a new standard. One shaped by your self-worth. One built on calm instead of chaos. One where honesty matters more than emotional games. This is why the reunion, if it happens, can feel so different from anything that came before. The tone shifts. The energy shifts. Even the simplest conversation carries more depth because the illusion has burned away. They are no longer speaking from a place of performance. They are speaking from a place of exposure, and when someone who once hid finally starts showing their real feelings, you can feel the difference instantly. The words may still be imperfect, but the vibration is cleaner, the effort is clearer, the truth is easier to recognize. In these final moments before the full breakthrough, their longing often becomes almost physical. They may feel drawn to your memory at random times, as if their whole body is searching for a place to rest. The old need to look unaffected starts collapsing. They become less interested in appearing strong and more interested in being real. This is a serious change, because once a person becomes willing to trade image for truth, the bond enters new ground. They start seeing that closeness is not weakness. Vulnerability is not defeat. Love is not a trap. It is a responsibility, and it asks maturity from both people. You may also notice your intuition becoming sharper than ever during this phase. Advice from others starts mattering less. The noise outside fades. Deep down, you know the story is reaching an answer. Not because you have forced one, but because you have outgrown the place where uncertainty once controlled you. That is why your peace becomes magnetic. It is not the kind of energy that begs to be chosen, it is the kind that simply stands in its own truth. And that can move mountains. Because the person on the other side feels it. They feel that you are no longer holding the rope, no longer waiting in the old way, no longer available to be taken for granted. That realization becomes the final push. If they want a place in your life, they must come with humility, clarity, and the willingness to meet you where you are now. When the breakthrough finally happens, it often feels both ordinary and life-changing at once. A voice, a message, a meeting. Something simple on the outside, but loaded with everything that could not stay buried any longer. And in that moment, there is usually a quiet recognition that goes beyond what is said. Two people meeting again, not as the same versions who were separated by fear, but as people changed by distance, silence, and hard truth. The conversation may not be perfect. It may not erase the past in 1 second, but if the shift is real, you will feel it. The honesty will be heavier, the excuses will be fewer, the emotional presence will be stronger. They may speak of regret. They may speak of how much they avoided, how much they understood too late, how much they do not want to repeat. And this is where the real work begins. Not fantasy, not prediction, real work, building something that can hold both people in truth. Creating a space where love is not carried by one person while the other hides. Creating a bond where both can be seen, heard, respected, and safe. If that is what arrives, then the silence was not wasted. It shaped you. It taught you. It showed both of you what love cannot survive and what it absolutely requires. And that is how a connection stops being a wound and starts becoming a choice. So if you are in that strange season now, where the air feels charged and your heart keeps telling you something is shifting, trust yourself more than the confusion. Trust the change you made when you chose your own peace. Trust the difference between chasing and allowing. Trust the quiet power of becoming someone who no longer needs to beg for what is meant for them, because whether this person returns tomorrow, later, or not at all, your greatest victory has already happened. You came back to yourself. You stopped feeding uncertainty with your life force. You learned that love cannot be healthy if it costs your center. And from that place, everything changes. If they return to a stronger you. If they speak to someone who now understands their own worth. If a new chapter opens, it will only survive through balance, respect, and truth. And if this message found you at the exact right time, take that as your sign to stay grounded. Do not shrink. Do not go backward. Let what is real come forward on its own feet. Because the person who fears losing you may indeed do something unexpected, but the deeper story is this: your power returned first. And that is what made movement possible at all. If you felt this in your chest, hold on to that feeling. What comes next may be closer than it seems.